All right. Great. Well, welcome everybody to the session on gaining visibility into attorney caseloads. My name is Aaron Kraus. I work for an organization, technology company, software company called LegalServer. Joining me is my colleague, Steve Rapp, who will be part of the session showing you some of this tooling and how it works. But we're very pleased to have here on the call to talk with you firsthand about some of their experience with this technology. Laura Fox and Kathy Kyle from the Snohomish County Public Defender Association. Before I turn things over to them, I'll just quickly say that LegalServer is again, a technology software company focused around case management solutions, but we've been solving many different technology-related problems in helping public defenders save time in their day. And ultimately, our objective is simplifying work for those that help people that can't afford legal representation or vulnerable populations. And so we were very pleased to be partnering with the Snohomish County Public Defender Association, and they've recently gone live with our system. So why don't I turn things over to Laura and Kathy to talk a little about some of the things that they're doing. So I'll stop sharing for them to take it away.
Great, thank you, Aaron. I'm Kathy Kyle. I'm with the Snohomish County Public Defender Association, and I'm the executive director. Laura Fox is our data analyst. And I see some names that I recognize, so thank you all for joining us. If you want to throw into the chat what your role is in your current situation, that might be helpful for our panel to direct our comments, make it more directly relevant to you. Laura, do you want to share our PowerPoint? I'm going to start and then I'm going to hand the mic over to Laura, just for some context. So as you all know, we have a ton of work to do. And how do you conceptualize, or how do you convince funders that you are doing a lot of work? Part of what we deal with in Washington are that we have what are called indigent defense standards. And these are guidelines about what public defense is supposed to look like. And in those indigent defense standards, and those were adopted in 1989, thank you, Laura Fox. In those indigent defense standards is a whole standard 3 is about caseloads. And it talks about caseload maximums, it talks about weighted caseloads. And again, that's a way to conceptualize the work. Snohomish County, which is the area that I work in, adopted these Washington State Bar Association indigent defense standards in the year 2000. But that really didn't transform the workload, that these caseload maximums were treated like targets, not ceilings. And so then our Supreme Court stepped in 2011 and adopted some of the standards into the court rules, which did then enforce caseload maximum as ceilings, although local jurisdictions like to push us right up into the maximum, as opposed to it being what we should be well under. Next slide, Laura. And so when we talk about what Laura, Steve, and Aaron are going to talk to you about our case credit system. And when we talk about a case credit, what we're generally talking about is one case or one cause number equals one credit. And we're using it in what we call a charge-based credit system, meaning that when we attach a charge, the charge is where the credit follows. But Washington also recognizes what's called a weighted caseload. And so maybe, homicide cases are given 4 credits and sex offense cases are getting 3 credits, or in misdemeanors that are more highly litigated or more complex cases like DUIs or domestic violence would be weighted differently than a simple driving infraction. What we created at SCPDA, which is how we talk about our organization, are also what we call supplemental and miscellaneous credits. And I'm going to let Laura give you a little glimmer under the hood of what that looks like. But really, that was a way to track work. And so one of our ideas was, we're doing a lot of work that we're not capturing over the life of a case. And an example would be a case, you do the arraignment, you read all the discovery, you meet with the client, and then the client doesn't appear for some reason. And we close it when it's after we cannot get them back into court. It's in bench warrant status. And so when that case reopens, is what we call it, we started tracking how many reopens are we doing. And we figured out that we're doing a ton of reopens, that these cases stay open. And there's somebody that just needs to mute their mic. It's just reverbing just a little. Thanks. We started tracking the reopens, and then we started giving a credit. So if a case reopens after it's been closed for 6 months, we're now giving a credit so that we can see that that case is going to be more work, that the client is maybe in a different position. So we need to re-interview, we need to reread that discovery, we need to retailor that investigation. This is a method to track that. Next slide, Laura. And part of what we're trying to do is provide transparency to not only our funders, this is the amount of work we're doing, but also internally, this is your workload. This is a way to conceptualize your workload. There's a danger in that I just want to talk about for a second of that you really need to be intentional when you start talking about our mission-based work as a credit, that can be really demoralizing for your non-data people or your people who don't think in numbers. And they think it's soul crushing is the word that I've heard. And so you need to really message strongly that the data itself is neutral and that there is no shame or comparison going on. It is just a way to look at the work and not an end-all be-all measure of the work, that we're an organization that values brave advocacy and no judgment. And part of those values is that the data is neutral, that we're not trying to work people to exhaustion, that we value efforts over outcomes. Part of this scoreboard idea is, one, you're trying to provide transparency of the work people are doing, and that's going to depend on the role. I will share with you the book that we used, or that we are trying to use to conceptualize. I'm going to throw it here in the chat for everyone. It's called The 4 Disciplines of Execution, and it has a whole chapter about what they call a scoreboard. But the idea is if people have access to the information, that you play harder, that when you play a pickup game of basketball, if you're keeping score, you're going to engage more, you're going to play harder is frankly the thing. And that's going to depend on, are you an administrator like me? Are you a supervisor? Are you an attorney? Are you a social worker? Are you a data analyst? All of those scoreboards may look differently based on these, tracking these credits or how those credits appear. I'm going to turn the microphone over to my colleague, Laura Fox, who not only is a data analyst guru, but she also introduced the concept of ergonomics to our office. And a lot of us now have standing desks thanks to Laura Fox. So she's a multi-talented colleague. Take it away, Laura.
Thank you. So I just wanted to start by giving you a little bit of the overview of our office, just so you have something to compare to for your own situation. So we're a public defense agency, but we are not for profit. We have a county office of public defense that screens our clients and sends us referrals. So we get to miss out on that part of the data. We do the bulk of the criminal public defense in our county, but we also have some other units, some civil units. We also have other city and municipality contracts. We work in different courts. So I just wanted to show you sort of the variety of the types of work we do within public defense, so that you can see that our reporting requirements and our adherence to caseload standards and the other reasons that we would use a credit system are fairly complex. So I just wanted to throw that out there. And the other thing I wanted to say is that we are currently, KK already said this, we're currently using LegalServer as our case management system. We've been using them for about 5 months now, and there's a number of reasons why we selected them over other vendors, and I just wanted to tell you a few of those. So we were really interested in a cloud-based system so that we weren't maintaining our on-site servers any longer. We were really hopeful about some potential integration with Office 365, which we're now working on, and most of our discovery is being stored in SharePoint, but is accessible through LegalServer. The reporting capabilities in LegalServer far outweigh our previous system. And so that's helpful because we're able to do a lot of reporting from the credit system, not only just reporting, on paper, but providing visuals, visual reports to our supervisors who are assigning cases. And then LegalServer agreed to develop this credit system for us as part of our contract with them, which was something we were really interested in. And finally, the pièce de résistance that we really liked about the system was that we could text our clients reminders of their hearings and their appointments. We have not fully launched that part of the system yet, but we're super excited about it. And we know that other jurisdictions or other agencies are having a lot of success with that. So there's a couple of other reasons to use ways that you can use a credit system that I just wanted to point out, not just to track attorney caseload standards. It also can help with the equitable assignment of cases between and among attorneys. Again, reporting to our funders. We, like KK said, we use supplemental credits that we kind of have evolved, and we're calling those miscellaneous credits now, but that allows us to give attorneys extra credit for certain types of cases. One example that's really easy is just a complex case where the volume of discovery is so large, or the legal issues are so complex that that attorney, we feel, deserves some additional credit. Sometimes we get paid for those by our Office of Public Defense, sometimes we don't. Another way that we're using this system is to assign credits to non-attorney staff, and I'll show you one example of that. Our investigators have a credit system and have had a credit system for years, but they've been, keeping it in an Excel spreadsheet. Our investigators for like a misdemeanor or a simple B or C felony receive 1 credit, and for a homicide they would get 4 credits, and then 2 and 3 credits in between there somewhere, with varying degrees of the seriousness of the charge. But that allows the assigners, the people who review investigation requests and assign them to investigators, to manage not only the number of cases that each investigator assigned, but also those case types, again, by trying to make sure that that each of the felony investigators has a homicide, rather than everybody having them all, and kind of getting bottlenecked in that way. One other example is for our involuntary treatment program. I'm assuming that other jurisdictions are familiar with that, but that's the mental health program where people are involuntarily committed, normally initially on a 120-day hold. Our ITA attorneys are not assigned 1 credit just for having that client. They are assigned 1 credit for each subsequent petition that the state files in that matter. So that's another way of looking at case credits. And this is just a beautiful piece of artwork that we've been tweaking now for several months. I'm not going to go into any detail, but it's our schema of how we are assigning attorney credits. And it can get kind of complicated, but once you have it figured out how you want to do it, it seems it's starting to work more smoothly now. And the other thing to note is that you can add a credit to a case, but you can also debit a credit from a case. So one thing that happens sometimes is we inadvertently assign a case or credit to the wrong attorney. We have to debit that back out and assign it to the proper attorney. So it's kind of both sides of the checkbook that's built into this system. And Steve Rapp, who was our onboarding specialist when we started using LegalServer, is going to demonstrate for you next some of the actual processes of that, so you can actually see how the system works a little bit. But I wanted to do a little preview of this report that we're able to do in LegalServer, just to give you an idea of what a report would look like. So across the top here, we have the case types, and those are established by our Administrative Office of the Courts in the state of Washington. And then across the down the left side, you have the attorneys. Totals are on the right, but you can see in between there that you can use this report to then equitably assign types of cases, right? Again, that same idea as with the investigators. You don't want one attorney to have all the homicides, et cetera, all the sex cases. So that was just one thing I wanted to share before Steve takes over. And I'm going to go ahead and unshare now so that Steve can go ahead and do some demonstration, but we will take your questions at the end.
Thank you, Laura. I really appreciate you guys, you and Kathleen, talking about your perspective on this. And we did have a fun journey with the onboarding and getting Snohomish County Public Defenders Association live with LegalServer. Once I can share the screen, I'm going to log in and show you from a LegalServer perspective, the kind of the front end of the case management system, and we'll be able to kind of walk through some of the functionality and the features that we have there.
Yeah, so Laura, if you don't mind, just stop your share and then Steve can take over. Great.
Okay, everyone should be able to see my screen now. I'm on a what we call a demo site or a sandbox site in LegalServer, and so there's no confidential data here. There may be some familiar names, but this is all basically made up data here. So we can kind of take a look through the functionality of how the case credit system works, and we'll see that in conjunction with some other tools within LegalServer. I'm logged in as an administrator, meaning I have a lot more power under my user role that I can make some changes, and I'll show you why. But a typical user wouldn't have quite as many capabilities as I would have here, but what they would see would be fairly similar to this. As Laura knows, we can modify this homepage where they log into to be basically whatever it is you need for your organization. The one nice thing about LegalServer is it's a no-code kind of software. Now, there's a lot of out-of-the-box functionality that's going to work well, but we can make configurations and changes to match your needs, to match your workflows, and so on and so forth. So as a user, when I log in, I typically would come to the home page here, and you can see that I've got a number of different tabs that I can click on to find out more information about what's going on in my daily workload. My assignments is where I'm going to see a lot of the cases that I'm typically working on, for example. And then I have a tab here that's actually showing me my case credits. So if I click on that, this is going to show me all the credits that I have on cases throughout a particular time frame. I can filter this list too if I wanted to see something during a particular date or a type of credit or credit amount, so on and so forth. But this is just a place where I, as a user in LegalServer, can see my case credits just at a glance. I can also click on any one of these links that will take me directly to one of these cases, so I can get into the actual details of that case. Now, the important thing about case credits is that there's multiple ways to attach a credit to a case. One obvious way is when we enter in a charge or account on that case, maybe when we're basically creating that case, what we would call an intake process. So if I start a new case and I add a charge to that case, whatever that might be, we can associate a charge. Or as Laura alluded to, we can also add credits to a case after the case has been opened or created, either by adding a new charge and or by using the kind of administrative credit tool that will allow us to add or deduct credits for different users in different ways. So I'm on this Robert Stroud case here, and I just wanted to point out some information on this particular case. Right now, this case doesn't have a charge that's showing up in this list here. So if I wanted to add a new charge under my actions menu, I can go and add charges in a couple different ways. I'm going to use my single custom charge here. There's a little bit of background noise, so if you're just listening in, if you wouldn't mind muting your microphone, that we'd appreciate that so everyone could hear. All right, so I'm on the charge form here, and you can see that there's a couple charges here, but I can enter a brand new charge. I can basically select what day was this client charged with whatever count they were charged with. We'll just say today. And then I can select a charge, and this is a drop-down list that you can control and configure. We uploaded the Washington State charges for Snohomish onto their demo site, and we could do the same for a different group. But the point here on the charges, I can do a search for either looking for like the statute number or just a charge in general. So let's say something like driving under the influence. So I just have to start typing the first few words there. And when I select that charge, you'll notice then I have some different options. It automatically defaults to the type of credit or the amount of credit that we have put into the back end of the system. So an administrator can go in under the charge and say, driving under the influence is always going to be worth 1 credit. And we have this site set up so it will automatically credit the primary assignment or the primary advocate on that case. I can change that if I wanted to say, actually, I don't want to give this credit to the primary assignment. I want to give it to somebody else. I can start typing in a name. And I can find that user and just select them here. I'm going to actually give a credit to both Jennifer Dunn, who's the primary assignment, and to myself as the user. Let's just say I'm like a co-counsel on this case, for example. The other fields are just related to the charge itself, but the case credits are the important things here. When I hit continue, I'm going to save that new charge to that case. And it's also going to allow me to save that credit information to those 2 users in the system. So when I hit continue, I've got a new charge on this particular case. And we've also got some new credits. So you can see here, our new driving under the influence charge is the top charge. We've also got credits on this particular case. So I can see on this individual case, all the credits that have been stored over time. This list view is just for this one case. It's not for all the cases. So there's been a lot of work over a long time. Again, this is a demo site, so there's a lot of testing and playing around going on here, but you can see all the different credits that have been associated to this particular case. This list view, again, I can filter this if I want to look for any particular information. I can also export most list views as an Excel file or a comma separated value file. Now, the other part is if I wanted to attach a credit to this case that wasn't related to the charge, I can go under my actions menu and I can add a credit. I'm just going to search for my process that I want to use here, add view case credits. This form is going to show me all those credits on this particular case, but this is where we're talking about that kind of a credit journal where we can add or deduct credits to this particular case. You can see that my list of credits is here at the top, but I also have a form that allows me to add or edit credits, which means I can say I want to add a credit that's associated with a charge on the case. If I say yes, then I can choose one of the charges that this client has on their case, or I can say no, I want to actually add a credit that's not related to the charge. And then I've got 2 drop downs here, and these are interlocking, which basically means that if I choose a particular credit type, let's say credit enhancement, I'm only going to have certain values to choose here from the credit subtype. And this was a feature that Snohomish actually had us do to enhance that, to make these 2 kind of work together, which I think was a really valuable tool there so that people wouldn't make mistakes as they're quickly trying to get their work done and accidentally selecting the wrong one. We're helping to minimize the number of errors that are made by making sure that the selections that they have are appropriate to the type of credit that they're trying to apply to this particular case. So the reverse example, if I choose credit deduction, I've got a smaller list here, but it's 2 different items, which allows me to say, okay, I wanted to direct some credit because maybe we transfer this case away. What date do we want to effectively add this credit to this case? Let's say today. I've got a new note field here that allows me to put in any kind of notes that I want about that particular credit that I added here. And then I can put in the credit amount, either a positive or negative amount. So I'll just put in, because we transferred it away, we'll say negative 0.5. So we lose half a credit there. And then the credit goes to the primary assignment by default, but we can also search for a different user in the system. So when I hit save and add another, that's going to add that credit to my list. You'll see here's that new deduction. The effective date is today, it's -5. It's not related to a charge, that's why it says NA here, but it tells me what type of credit and who the user would credit it. And now instead of a total of 6, we have 5.5 because we took out a negative value in our credits there. So this information is on that case itself. I'm going to go back to the home screen here really quick so I can show you a little bit more information about those case credits. Now, let's say, for example, that I was a supervisor or a policy chief or something. I needed to see different types of information about my unit or about case credits in general to say who has the room or capacity to take on more cases. I'm going to switch my home screen view to a different view so I can show you a little bit different information here. I'm on what we're calling the policy chief dashboard, so it's a slightly different home screen. But basically, it's just a collection of different information that allows me to see things about my my attorneys or my division or my program, however you'd like it to work. But the caseload capacity tab here, I've got credits, and I'm looking at credits by my division. So this report basically allows me to pull in this different information. And so I'm filtering to look at just for the appeals division. And you can see that I've got a total of 14 credits overall for the appeals division. This list view over here, this visualization shows me the different attorneys. So I've got Larry attorney, Kay Champson, and so on and so forth. And you can see their totals, how many credits each of those attorneys have. I've also got a pie chart that's showing me the types of credits by case type. We don't have a lot of case types in this particular demo site, but as Laura showed you, they had broken those out into a lot more case types. And so that's something that we at LegalServer would work together with any individual program to decide, how best do you want to break that out? How do you want to report on that? And you can get that data back and see that in multiple ways. So you can see some information here. This pie chart is basically the same as this view here. It's just showing it in 2 different fashions. So this would be as logged in as a division leader, a policy chief, or something like that to see some different information. The other information that's going to be useful is just on the user themselves. If I wanted to take a look at an individual user, this tab, I'm logged into my user section front so I can see different user information. So I'm showing the information for me as LegalServer staff as the logged in user, but we've got a section down here that talks about the credits. And these would be all of the credits that this particular user has throughout history. So I can see for all of the cases, starting with today's date and going down to the past, last year in April was the first credit on this particular person. You can see that there's a total of 22 credits. You can, in the back end of the system, also determine on charges when the credit effective date would be, and also if there's an expiration date. So if you wanted to have your credits expire at the end of a year and start over fresh, like January 1st, we have the capability to do that as well. So this is a longer list. It's showing me more than just 1 calendar year, but you have a way to effectively deal with that kind of information. But also reporting in LegalServer allows you to see easily and build out ways that you can see for this quarter, for this year, for this month, for this week, who has how many cases, who has how many credits. This is just a user perspective. How many credits over the course of their lifetime as an employee do we have showing in here? We've also embedded some charts to show some information. So we've got a my case credits chart. Currently, as LegalServer staff, you can see I've got 4 charge-based credits. I've also got a couple credits up here and a credit enhancements of 2 here. So it's showing me the total credits I have. This is just a visualization that we've embedded from a report onto this page. We're also showing case credits over time. So you can see kind of that ebb and flow of this line chart, how many that I had certain times of the year. And then the assignments is basically all the cases I've had not related to credits. So these 3 tabs are my credits in general as a user. Now, as far as reports go, I'm going to open up my reports section front here. We have the capability of helping you build out, and you can also build out reports. Laura's getting really good at working through reports now, so she builds a lot of her own. And in fact, this top one I stole from her. But I just wanted to show you this credit report by user, by case type, and charge for the previous year. Shows me very specific information. So if I click on this link, I can open up that report. This is basically the report section front here that I can see the tabular data and any visualizations I've decided to show with that report as well. You'll notice that this report has certain filters. It's looking only for the top charge on a case, and it's also looking for the effective date of the credit to be of last calendar year. So I'm only looking for things that happen in 2020. So if I run this report, we're going to see some information similar to the report Laura showed, but it's broken down in a much smaller area here. We've got case types of either NA, felony, or misdemeanor cases. I can see the advocate's name, who is the user that was credited, what type of credit they got, was it for a felony case, a misdemeanor case, or some other type of credit, and then their totals as well. And then we've got the pie chart here that shows the different types of case credits. And then this is the tabular data that basically shows me what case was it in LegalServer, what's the client name, their cause number, who got the credit for that. And it shows you the information of those different credits here. You can see the credit amount changes over time, the date of the effective date, so on and so forth. So you can kind of see what you're looking at a glance at those particular cases if you needed to see that. So that's one version of a report there. And other reports that we used in different areas that we pulled in some of those visualizations are also in this area here. Credits by unit, for example, if I open that particular credit by unit up, run that report. This is looking for any open and pending cases. It's showing me the type of credits, which, what type of, what program or division is that credit under? So under our general program, we've got 35 credits. Under our appeals program, we've got 9 credits. Family defense, there's 4, federal, there's 3, and so on and so forth. I probably don't need to read all those to you. And then we have the tabular data that shows the all the different cases here, what program or division they're assigned to, and then the different cases and what type of credits they are. The report functionality in LegalServer, this is basically the run mode. So somebody can come in and view that run mode. But if I wanted to make some changes to this report as an administrator or a report builder, I can go in and make changes. So I can change, like, what am I filtering on, for example? Do I want to look at only closed cases, for example? Do I want to look for a particular advocate? Or do I want to change the header on a report or add that as a column that I want to actually filter on? I don't want to get into the nuts and bolts of actually monitoring reports. I just want to point out that you have a lot of control and a lot of power in the reports within LegalServer. That's a built-in tool within the system itself. I think that that's kind of the main thing that we wanted to talk about. I do want to quickly go back to my case and show you from a administrator perspective, though. Let me get back to my user view here. As an administrator, if I'm in a case and I want to say, I need to make some minor changes to that form, let's take a look at the credit form, for example. A typical user wouldn't have this capability, but somebody that has the administrator role would have the ability to modify how this form looks and some of the basic behavior of what we're seeing here. So as an administrator, I can click on the admin tool here and edit this form. And this is going to allow me to modify what that form shows or how it works. And this is what I meant by the no code software. So anyone that has the administrator user role can modify what we show up here. I can add new information to this. Let's just add an instruction. I can type in, this is my instruction box. And I can also modify how those case credits work. So I can do things like, I want to default the effective date to today's date, for example. I want to acquire that effective date, or I can require the credit note. I can also say, who do I want to assign that credit to by default? Right now we have it set to default to the primary assignment or the primary advocate on the case, but I could also have no default or the current logged in user. So these are some things that we can control on that form. So once I hit save on this, I've added this new instruction box and I've defaulted the effective date to today. So when I hit continue and save my changes, when I go back to that form, I scroll down a little bit here, you'll notice the effective date now defaults to today's date, and it shows this red asterisk that basically means that this is a required field, and that's that instruction box that I added in there. I don't have to know how to code things in HTML to be able to do something like that or add new information to this form. The lookups, when we're talking about these different lookups here, an administrator also has the ability to control those. So I'm just going to quickly show you what I mean by a lookup. It's what a lot of people would call a drop-down list or a pick list. If I open up one of these examples, this is going to be my case credit lookup here. So you can see I have these three values: case credit deduction, credit enhancement, none charge based. I can edit one of these if I want to change the name, or I can add a brand new one. And then when I talked about interlocking, the other lookup that we can also modify the values shows up down here, but I could say if I add a new one in here, I can say that I want only difficult client to show up for Steve's credit type, or I want case transferred away to also show up there, or maybe I want all four. It's really up to you, but I'm just going to say difficult client because that's what I have to deal with all day. Just kidding, Laura. I'm going to change it so Steve's credit type is difficult client. I'll hit continue. So now when I go back to that form, and I'll refresh that form so those changes apply there. If I say no on associate with the charge, and I choose my credit types, you'll notice there's Steve's credit type that we just added in less than 30 seconds. And then the only value I have here to choose is case credit subtype. So it's really easy to quickly go in and make a new drop-down value that your users can select. But again, only administrators in LegalServer can do that, not just your typical user. But it's really easy to make some changes. And because we created that as a lookup, a pick list value where somebody has to affirmatively select that value, it makes it much better for reporting rather than having somebody just type in a note box, some free form text. Because if I want to report on all the credit types that are Steve's credit type, I can easily find them without having to worry about how did somebody spell my first name? How did somebody, exactly, how do they put that in just a text box? So that's the basic stuff that I wanted to make sure that we showed how that worked in LegalServer. I'm going to pass the baton back to Laura and Kathleen to see if you guys had anything else you wanted to talk to, and then we'll also open it up for any questions.
I don't think I have anything else to add, but we'll certainly take some questions if people have any.
One question that came up in the chat was, are there caseload maximums? And in Washington, there are. They're in Indigent Defense Standard 3, and I can send you the link if anybody wants to see it, but it caps felonies at 150 new felonies a year, 400 misdemeanors a year. If it's case weighting, then it's a maximum of 300 misdemeanors a year, 36 appeals. I think it's 250 juvenile. And part of the hard part is that because those are all different values, when a lawyer transfers from one unit to another mid-year, a credit system helps us conceptualize what's the workload they're leaving behind and what's the workload that they're taking on and how to do that, again, equitably, like Laura talked about. But again, those are caseload maximums, not necessarily where quality work happens. And that's one of the things we're trying to figure out in tracking this data is what is the sweet spot? Because in Washington, it's just incoming cases. It's not the total number of ongoing or pending cases. And at what point does it become too many cases to manage? And Shoshana's asking about time. Steve, do you want to demo the timekeeping, or do you not have that?
Oh, absolutely. I can show that.
And yes, the answer to Shoshana's question, which is talking about using timekeeping on an individual case, and can you see what's going on? Yes. And at our organization, we tried to categorize it into about 5 buckets of work, and we can do a little. If somebody's struggling or feeling overwhelmed, we can look at it and be like, oh yeah, I can see why you have this particularly complex case. Or we can look at it and be like, well, you're spending a lot of time with clients and not a lot of moving the case forward. Maybe we need to set some boundaries around client time and case action.
So while you're talking, I'm just entering a time slip on this Robert Stroud case. This is our case time slip. Like the other form I showed you, we can modify this and get the data metrics that you need to collect. So there may be some things here that are confusing, like the funding code. You may not need to worry about who you're charging that time to, but activity type and code, what did I do? It's case activity, so it's a time slip on the case itself. What did I do? It's a tentative hearing or trial. I can use start and stop times. When did I start and stop that? Or just put in a whole number amount, 2.5 hours, and then details live on the time slip. And the case notes actually attach the time slip note to the case itself. And then if I save that, it's going to save this time slip to this case. I can see on this particular case then that I have a number of different time slips. This is the one that I just entered in here. Right now we can see on this case, there's 41.6 hours been spent on this particular case by all these different people. And then obviously we can use reports and information to see what kind of timekeeping has been done in general. I also have a timekeeping section where I can look at, okay, what are my time slips? Right now, this is looking at me as a logged in user and my data services today. So this is the only time slip for today. But if I wanted to look at, over a time as a user, these are all the time slips I've put into the system since last April. And then I can also see when was the data service, time spent, so on and so forth. So this is not a report, but it's basically part of our timekeeping. But reports would be where administrators or division leaders, whatever, could look at their supervisees and say, how much time are they spending on these cases, and do that data analysis that Laura loves to do to figure out who's working too hard or maybe needs some help to figure out how to be more efficient in what they do, or what types of case are they running, and how much time are those cases taking, and do we need to look at cutting down their workload because they have a lot of very difficult cases that are taking much of their time and they just don't have the capacity or bandwidth to do some other things. I hope that's what you were wanting to look at, Kathleen, but let me know if there's something else.
I think that was responsive to the question that was posted in the chat.
Excellent.
Getting public defenders to record their time is a whole other session. And if there's somebody who wants to do that for next year, I will attend. There is a book called Drive, and it's all about like how to motivate people. And in there, they talk about lawyers putting in their time. And I'm like, come on, book, I'm reading you for this purpose, not for you to tell me that that's the problem. So the problem has been identified, still looking for solutions. Again, busy public defenders, recording their time is been described as also soul crushing. And I think if we could show them the utility that time equals less cases assigned, that if you're doing quality work, that your workload is adjusted, we would have more buy-in to kind of keeping it.
One thing I would add to that too, Kathleen, is in LegalServer, we tried to make it so that's a little bit easier. So for example, when you're adding a case note, we have the ability to attach time to that case note, so they don't have to type in the case note, then transfer to some other page and then enter a time slip. We tried to put those things together in a sense so that we know that people are going to put in a lot of case notes, and hopefully then they can quickly just put in, yep, I spent an hour or 0.5 an hour putting this case note, and it's a quick, efficient way to do it. But again, you're right. I think that across the globe, even in the civil side of things, as well as public defenders, everyone hates putting in their time, and trying to get them to do it is the challenge.
There was another question from Jackie about how do we track like other non-case work. So those are our time types for working in client files. LegalServer also has some time types for other types of work that can include training, unit meetings. LegalServer, because they come from a platform of civil legal aid, also has some nice utility around sharing good stories that you can record that, and also outside contacts, so engaging in the community. And I, as a director, am tracking my time so I can see where my procrastination is happening, which that was another session that everybody should watch. But that's been useful to me to kind of see like where am I spending a lot of my time, or where am I not creating scheduling time for. Any other questions? Oh, and Laura put the other time types in the chat if people want to see that. Laura, do we have time types different for different roles? Do investigators have different buckets than lawyer buckets? This is the you're muted
I'm
portion.
trying to
of our
work my technology. Yes, we do. Investigators have, there's some overlap, but there are also a few different time types for different roles. In this system, we tried to keep it really simple. Our previous system had about, I don't know, 25 or 30 different things you could put time in for, and it was just too complicated. I did note in the chat that we are in the process of expanding the detail on our client communication types because some of our funders are interested in, for instance, knowing whether how we're doing communicating with clients in custody, so we can show a report for an in custody client. Was that a face-to-face meeting, or what did we just write them a letter or send them a kite or whatever? So we are expanding that a little bit, but we're really trying to keep it simple. And one of the things that we've talked about doing, which we haven't explored yet, but we will in the future, is the idea of designing a form to collect information for a period of time. So like a pilot data collection process. So one of the ideas is we need a form to collect information on motions. I wrote a motion, I filed the motion, I argued the motion, and what was the result of that, and not have to tie that particular activity into time categories necessarily, because all of that work would be categorized as casework as a time in a time slip. But there might be examples where we would like to look at a specific area of practice with a little more detail, and we can easily design a form to collect that information without having to have the help of a programmer for the most part.
So there was a question in the chat, does the amount of time on a case result in more points? That, you're reading our mind. That's what we're trying to move toward, is essentially instead of having cases weighted by case type that, some homicides you may resolve fairly quickly because it's a favorable plea disposition, and I was about to say a simple drug case that goes through pretrial motions and trial takes a lot more time, but in Washington, they just found our drug possession law unconstitutional. So I need to come up with a new example here. But the case that's considered kind of a bread and butter case, but your lawyers really working it, can we use that to give to our funder as this case needs a complex case credit? And we define complex case as a wide variety of things. Does it have a volume of discovery? Does it require extra time? And that you would get another credit. And that way, when you're talking 150 felonies a year or 150 felony credits a year, how you could really move the ball game on providing quality work. So yes, that's our ultimate goal, and to automate that and have that as part of our system, and not have it be like in a separate Excel sheet, or we used to have a book where we wrote all of our cases down in. We appreciate questions because we're doing a Mindful March campaign, and you're helping me not fill the silence, but you can see the tension, and I want to fill the silence because I am a trial lawyer by years of practice.
Couple of questions.
Shoshana asks, do you assign credit for every attorney on the case, or just the primary? And do you include that with your case standards for the state standards? The answer is yes. So if we determine right now in COVID, we've had trial suspensions, meaning that sometimes the court wasn't doing trials. And in Washington, we have also attorney qualifications. This is their word, not ours. We think all of our attorneys are qualified. but they have to do so many cases, types of trials before they can take on like felony B violent cases. So they have to do 2 felony cases before they can do a B violent. So we've been co-chairing cases as a way to get people exposure to trial so that we can get them qualified. And we have to petition for the co-chair to be assigned. And sometimes our funding agency will say, yep, that case gets a co-chair. It's, by standard, it's an aggravated murder, and we get that co-chair credit. Sometimes we're told no. And so we will give them what we call an SCPDA credit, not to be narcissistic, but that's just the way we put that in the system, and we can count how much work we're doing that we're not getting paid for to hopefully in the future get paid. That is a strategy that worked on the reopens. Like I said, we were only getting 1 credit per case, just no matter how long that case was with us. Now we have a system that will get another credit if the case goes on the shelf for a while, and then it comes back and it has more work that needs to happen.
Well, we'll do maybe a final call for questions here and then wrap up the session. So if anybody has any remaining questions, throw them in the chat or just unmute and let us know. But you all should be seeing the contact information for Laura, Kathy, and myself. This is Aaron. If you have anything that you want to ask of us another day, feel free to shoot us an email. But Laura, Kathy, Steve, great job today. Thank you for your time and insightful.
We have one more question
views on
if
this
we
topic.
wanted to take it. Sorry, Aaron. I know you're trying to do a nice wrap up there. So we had a question in the chat about whether or not if we do any horizontal representation and how does that impact credit for cases. We do track not in every circumstance do we track horizontal representation, but in some instances we do, and it allows us to see again that volume of work. An example of that for us is our fugitive cases. So where people are arrested on out-of-state warrants and we represent them, oftentimes it's just a single hearing, but sometimes it results in more work if we end up filing a writ. And that has its own credit system so that we can track that volume of work. And Laura talked about what's called ITA or Involuntary Treatment Act cases, the commitments for mental health. That is also a place where we get a credit for the initial petition to detain, but if there are subsequent petitions, if it's an extended detention, we'll get another credit per petition. And that is a form of horizontal representation that a different lawyer may be appearing at that next civil commitment hearing. And some of these we have automated, like when we enter a case, it's automated to put the credit in. And in some of these cases, we're going in and manually adding the credit. And Steve kind of demoed that process. All right, Aaron, you want to try to take it home again?
Well, we'll give it one more opportunity for questions. But this has been a great session, really excellent interaction. We appreciate all the questions. we could probably spend some more time on this, as it's a pretty detailed topic. So if anybody has any more follow-up questions on the screen here, you can find our contact info to shoot us an email.
Thank you all.
But
Thank you,
yeah, so
everybody,
again,
for
Laura,
sticking with
Kathy,
us.
Steve, thank you very much. That'll be a wrap for the session, and hope the rest of the day goes well and everybody has a great weekend.